Happy Tuesday, everybody. 5280 Sports Network, your morning minute. Nate Lundy, Shawn, Drotar. Thanks for stopping by here on this Tuesday as we roll closer and closer to the holiday. Got some last-minute shopping to do. I've heard 7-Eleven is a good place to visit. Looking at the five men along the front line of the offense for the Denver Broncos. We talked about this on the radio show this morning, and I asked you flat out, do you want any of the five back, Shawn?
Yeah, and by the way, thanks a lot. If my family's watching, he wasn't supposed to spoil where I was shopping for Christmas, but we'll move on. That's fine.
The trick is to keep the Slurpee from melting before they open it.
Yeah,
just saying.
Leave it outside and just bring it in the, Santa style. Back to the offensive line. When you look at the Denver Broncos line, I guess I look at the money's going to be part of the equation, but I see your point. Let's just take it out of there. I think Russell Okung is interesting. I think he's 29 years old. Maybe there's still someone that can be salvaged. I still think Max Garcia has a lot of potential. I like Matt Paradis. Obviously, Paradis has been outstanding. That right side, Schofield and Stevenson and Sombrilo, who, by the way, was inactive in the most important game of the year, in a game where your offensive line is bad, inactive. I think those are guys you have to move away from, though I don't suspect they'll move away from all of them. I don't even know if they'd even consider moving away from Sombrilo and Schofield.
Yeah, I think it's going to be dependent upon the ability for the front office, coaching staff, et cetera, to a certain extent to look in the mirror and be able to say, hey, we missed on these picks or on this signing or whatever the case may be. And that's a challenge for every team in every sport. Every professional one has to be able to do that. Sometimes you have to be able to say, we missed on that pick, or we spent a lot of money on this particular free agent and it didn't work out. I'm looking at you, Houston Texans. Sometimes you have to be able to do that, and that's not easy to do. There's a lot of ego in professional sports, both on the field and off, and you have to be willing to say, we missed. What can we do to get better? In terms of cap space, we know that the NFL will reassign what the cap is. As of right now, it's expected to go up by about $15 million or so. But you also have some guys you need to sign. You have a Sylvester Williams. You have a Kayvon Webster. There are people you are going to have to decide what you want to do with. And so it's not like they can just pull money out of the trees. But at the same time, you have consistently somewhat ignored what you're doing on the offensive line. And it may be time to spend some money. The question is, can you do enough, Shawn, to balance the idea of drafting, regardless of where you draft, whether it's middle of the pack or later, and free agency to put together the right offensive line, knowing that offensive line and free agency, these guys almost always wind up getting somewhat overpaid because there's not a lot of them.
Right. Well, and how successful have the Broncos been at identifying the right offensive lineman in free agency? I venture to say not very. How well have they drafted offensive line? Not very. The Broncos need to not only look in the mirror like you're talking about, but they also need to look in the mirror and say internally, do we have the right people in place? Do we have the right process in place to even identify the correct targets, the right players to go get, whether it's draft or free agent, that can fit into our offense and do what we want them to do? Because as it stands, they keep cycling through guys somewhere, even Pro Bowl caliber players. You think about Luis Vasquez, first and foremost, Evan Mathis. These were Pro Bowler guys, still cycling through. The Broncos, I think, have to look even beyond their own players and say, what do we really want and how do we find them?
Moving over to a more positive story, Shawn, you spent some... I went out to dinner last night. I just needed a break because, family's coming to town. You got to get a break. But you spent some time last night watching the Nuggets, and you said are you starting to get that kind of good feeling, that little tingle up your back? What's going on?
Well, I think the Nuggets are still a ways from contending, but you're starting to see some promise with the young players. Gary Harris and Nikola Jokic, especially last night. Jokic, we see what he can do with the ball as a phenomenally gifted passer as a big man. Basically, almost had a triple-double by the half, and then didn't quite finish with one, but the stats are the stats. They got the win. Harris, Jokic, and to an extent, when you look at a guy like Jamal Murray and Emmanuel Mudiay, who's starting to understand that he doesn't have to take jump shots. There's some ability there. That talent is starting to gel as Michael Malone is starting to find a rotation that works. The question is, what do you do with a guy like Yusuf Nurkic, who barely, didn't even get off the bench last night? That's a bit of a challenge too. But the talent is starting to rise to the top, which means now the Nuggets can identify who they need to keep, who they need to move on from, and then maybe you can start building towards making a playoff run in the Western Conference, though not this year.
Don't downplay the ability to find great gifts at a gas station. I'm just saying, don't downplay it.
I'm counting on it.
You never know. Sometimes you just need to snap into a Slim Jim. For Shawn, Drotar, I'm Nate Lundy, reminding you can catch us every weekday morning, Mile High Sports Radio, 7 a.m., AM 1340, FM 1047. Of course, all our Morning Minute videos, our Facebook Live content, the podcast with Ryan Green and Jake Marsing, all kinds of content for you posted up at milehighsports.com and 5280sportsnetwork.com. For Shawn, I'm Nate. See you tomorrow.